You're listening to Southern Fried Sports with Travis Reier on Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa. This is Southern Fried Sports with Bama Online senior analyst Travis Reier on your home for Alabama sports. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Make it through this year, I think I'm gonna put this bottle down. I guess as time goes on, I'll grow to miss it less than I will now. And I think I'm gonna tell her that I'm gonna go away for a while, till I can get this demon out.
It is 11 a.m. on a beautiful Monday morning here in Tuscaloosa. I am Jacob Harrison filling in for the one and only Travis Reier here on Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports. As always, Southern Fried Sports is brought to you by Peterbrook Chocolatier, 205-752-0211. As a father, you will do your father proud on Father's Day this coming Sunday by simply getting something chocolate from Peterbrook Chocolatier. But hey, they've got all sorts of things going on. Handprints for dads Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 12 to 2 p.m. Chocolate day camps Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 3 p.m. Bring your own bottle, gelato and frozen treats, and Father's Day gifts on the daily as well. So go check them out there on McFarland Boulevard, just as you're crossing over into Northport. Give them a call at 205-752-0211. Peterbrook Chocolatier here in Tuscaloosa. Well, if I'm over here, then that would mean that Mason Woods, who is with us on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, is hanging out with us in the production studio. So today, he and I do combine to form the 60-Minute Man of Sports Talk Radio. So, Mason, what's going on, man? What are we going to do today for a whole hour?
You know, I don't know what we're going to do today. It was a pretty stacked week last week. You know, we had that Saban extension come through. We had the 12-team format get proposed. So, you know, maybe we can just try to rely on some things from last week to talk about a little bit.
Hey, that's how it goes around here until something pressing does in fact break. So for anybody that may have not tuned in to any of my incoherent ramblings Friday night or Saturday morning, that is kind of the general space that I will sit in. Is the 12-team expansion of the playoffs? I think I've been pretty open for the past 2 years on these airwaves that is something that I believe wholeheartedly. That coupled with NIL, that coupled with the transfer portal rule, and eventually a little bit more organization in how schedules are produced, that college football can begin to repair what has been for a long time a broken system. And the opinions of Jacob Harrison do not represent those of Southern Fried Sports, but nonetheless, I feel very confidently that this is nothing but a positive, and I feel very confidently that at the end of the day, the NCAA will never do anything to harm its products. It doesn't go out of its way to harm March Madness. It doesn't go out of its way to harm college baseball. It doesn't go out of its way to harm college softball. It makes the most influential decision that it can to assist its own pocketbooks. It has no other choice in the matter, excuse me, to get that done. It makes total sense for them to continue to do these things that pad their pocketbooks. And at the end of the day, regardless of all the talk that we could possibly go into, all the discourse that we could possibly go into, and you could, of course, join the conversation here on Southern Fried Sports, 205-342-9904. And I get that. We can talk about all the negatives and positives for the game itself. We can talk about all the negatives and positives for the networks, for the players, for the coaches, yada, 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 yada. The integrity of the sport, the integrity of the greatest regular season in sports, whatever. I understand that despite discussing all that this in turn is for the NCAA to make itself more money, for ESPN and the other networks to make themselves more money. And while that's the crux of the problem at the top for the players is that they're being taken advantage of in those ways, you cannot blame them. That is the nature of this of the country. That is the nature of the world that we live in. Is you got to go out and go get yours. Now, same deal though. Is coupling all these things together improves things for the athletes on a grander scale than not. They have more freedom and more opportunities to create chances for themselves to do what they feel they need to do to further their athletic careers. And at the end of the day, they deserve that. I don't know why anybody would get caught up in the idea of order and discipline when it comes to an 18-year-old making a 4-year decision, and just because he plays a sport or she plays a sport, she's signing a lifetime contract to be immortalized at that university, and nothing else can change that. I'm not behind that. I went to 3 different universities over the course of 8 years. Like, why do I have different advantages over that just because I didn't play ball? Like, that doesn't add up. They're human beings at the end of the day, and that's the way that I've always felt when it comes to this sort of thing is allow them to be human beings, allow them to go out and do their thing. But in the same breath as that, I feel like one of the most important conversations is one that is difficult to come to and understand of what should be done, what can be done, or is it one of those things where we're just going to let it go? And that is the fact that the national champion of the 2023 season, as it stands right now, will have played 17 football games at minimum. And I'm not crazy about that. And while I could definitely sit here and say, well, then just don't play the cupcake warm-up game against Mercer. Don't play the cupcake game against Southern Miss. Don't play the cupcake game against New Mexico State or whoever, is coming in to get blown out by 60 and get a paycheck. You can very easily say, just don't play those games. It's not that easy because of the networks, the universities, and all those other people vying for the money that comes from those things. And that's fair and that's understandable. But at the end of the day, at what point is too many games too many games? That is something that I do wholeheartedly agree with on the traditional side, is because if we're really going to talk about player safety, we can't ask these kids, these young men to go out and play 17 games. You can't do it. They're going to. So you shouldn't do it. But I can't get on board with it mentally right now. Now, facts being what they are, in 2023, when the playoffs get underway and they start getting into the games, the playoffs run their course, we name a national champion, the last thing that will be on my mind is the fact that they just played 17 games. Last thing I'll think about. Because for me, there's the justification of we just watched 11 incredible football games. We just watched history in the making. We just watched opportunities be given to those that before had not had them. And I appreciate that on that surface level, but there's still the factor that, and even when they do start getting NIL, and these players are being compensated for their time and efforts, it's not enough for the 17 games. There's something, and nothing is finalized with this college football playoff 12-team expansion. Nothing's finalized. but you have got to figure out and formulate a plan that offsets the fact that these kids have to play so many games. I'll argue that if you're going to stay, then that's fine because you're only asking the best of the best to go play 17 games. It's not like you're asking all 130 teams. And when you're doing that, oftentimes you're asking that of the players that will eventually be going on to the NFL, where their regular season is 17 games. So you might have an opportunity to justify it that way. And the fact that, the Coastal Carolinas and Cincinnatis of the world, if they're not prepared to play 17 games and they're not prepared to win a national championship, if you're not prepared to play those 17 games, you're not prepared to be that good. You're not prepared to be in that situation. And in turn, it's supposed to be difficult for the lower seeds to go on and win a championship. That being said, as we saw with Arkansas, with NC State in college baseball, that's the point of a playoff, is to allow advancement, to see who can capitalize in that moment. It's not all about the regular season. The regular season doesn't lose value because the postseason gains value. Otherwise, we wouldn't have postseasons in literally every other sport. We would just do what they used to do and just say, oh, you guys look pretty good. You're the champions. Which is how some of these arguments sound, is, well, we did all this. We beat X, Y, and Z by X, Y points, and we deserve it. When in reality, you have your schedule, and it's completely different from somebody else's schedule, and that's why you meet in the playoffs to determine who is the best of the teams that were able to dominate their schedules. That's what the regular season is for. If you still lose 2 or 3 games, you're still in a state of not being able to wholly figure out where you're going. 205-342-9904. That's the number to call. You can always join the show. That way we can discuss this and so many other topics, whatever's on your mind. I'm free to answer any questions concerning Alabama Crimson Tide football, basketball, whatever it may be. We'll figure it out. We'll discuss it right here on Southern Fried Sports on Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports.
The Alabama Football Countdown Clock is driven by Crawford Insurance, Tuscaloosa's low-cost auto insurer. Call 752-6489 for a free quote today.
Roll Tide! Roll Tide!
There are 82 days until Alabama football. Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
Partly to mostly sunny and hot this afternoon. Just a few isolated showers or storms through the evening hours. The high today 92, tonight's low 70. Tomorrow and Wednesday, a good supply of sunshine both days. The high tomorrow 93, Wednesday's high at 89. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 84 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
Tide 100.9. For more coverage of Alabama football, visit us at Tide100.9.com or download the free Tide 100.9 app.
The Crimson Tide will not be denied.
We're back for more on Southern Fried Sports here on Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports. Not a lot going on in the offseason. It's been a pretty slow offseason for the most part. We'll dive into some of the news that did happen over the weekend for the Crimson Tide. But, it's hard to find anything of true impact this time of year, so you kind of dive into more analysis and the Mount Rushmore talks and all those sorts of things on sports radio. But you can also find varying degrees of interest among the sports community in what they partake in to help get them through the offseason. And one of the things that I do a lot, usually during the offseason of football, is play a lot of football video games. It's what I've always done. How else do you satiate that ridiculously long time period where there is no football on the television screen? And traditionally, that's Madden NFL football. You don't have any other choice. Kind of is what it is. Well, this year, news has been a little bit slow on what's going on with Madden and, all the other little details. Won't get too crazy into them. I know not everybody's a massive fan, but the reason I bring it up is because back in February, it was rumored that it would be Derrick Henry as the cover athlete of the next iteration of Madden NFL, Madden 22. And why wouldn't you? He wears 22. The past 2 seasons, he's led the NFL in rushing yards. Last year, he ran for 2,000. And Madden's going to go with the number 2 thing, but it isn't going to be Derrick Henry. It's basically been all but confirmed within the past couple of days that it's not going to be Derrick Henry. But today was the first time that Madden's really said anything, or EA Sports has said anything about the Madden video game. And it appears they're going to put 2 goats on the cover this year. Who might those 2 goats be? Well, that's the big mystery. They'll reveal that on Thursday, and it'll be fun or whatever. Mason, you and I are both big video games guys. You and I both play Madden every single year, whether we enjoy the game or not. Tell me it's not going to be Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes.
I'm afraid that I can't do that.
Is there any other combination of goats? One goat was bigger than the other, so it leans in even more that it's Brady and Mahomes. But
it's gonna be them. It's going to.
We can't squeeze in Jerry Rice or Walter Payton.
Yeah, maybe
the goats thing.
I guess. I'm come on. Derrick Henry wears number 22. What else do you want, EA?
Question though. Vince Young was once on the cover. Vince Young did, in fact, display traits of said Madden curse. You really sure you wanted Derrick Henry back on there?
There's been players that have broken the Madden curse.
And Mahomes avoided it.
Yeah.
I think
Lamar avoided it, didn't he?
I think so,
yeah.
I think Brady himself actually avoided it.
There's been people to do it.
Maybe that's why they're going right back to Mahomes and Brady's, because they both avoided the curse. Maybe.
Either way, not a fan of it.
No, not a fan of recycling guys within a few years. I've never done that before. I don't think anybody's ever been on the cover twice, right?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I think if it was going to be anybody, it would have been Tom Brady, and I don't think he's been on 2. So
no, he's only been on the 1.
Yeah.
Painful. Speaking of likeness, though, I mean, and on that same vein, we will one day soon get EA Sports College Football, so we'll be able to play with all of our favorite Alabama Crimson Tide players. Yeah! Very, very awesome that Kool-Aid McKinstry is the official name of JaQuincy McKinstry in the roster on RollTide.com. And it's really already a bit of a blossom, to this NIL thing where he's going to be able to take advantage of the fact that his nickname is Kool-Aid. Whether or not that's immediate, because I'm not even sure he's going to be the starting cornerback. I'm still pretty confident that's Jalen Armour-Davis, opposite of Josh Jobe. But McKinstry's going to be on the field. He's going to get playing time. He is that good. It is not all hype and pomp and circumstance with Kool-Aid McKinstry. He is legitimately that good. If you watch just a handful of reps at A-Day, you'd understand that. But it does make it kind of interesting. We had this discussion on Saturday Morning Showdown, 8 to 11 on Saturday mornings. Me and Joe Gaither did about which players are the most marketable for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I mean, right out the gate, he caught so much traction on social media because of the off chance that some random guy took a screenshot of his name in the roster, and he was everywhere. People already calling him Hall of Famers, saying it was just a genius move. to go ahead and get sign a contract with Kool-Aid. It all works out.
It's genius. He could not start his career as a college athlete where he can make money any better.
I mean, and a lot of guys at Alabama are like quiet. You know what I mean? Like the outside noise isn't present because everybody's like, yeah, it's Alabama. Like they have freaks over there. We're just not going to talk about them and just let them do their thing. It's whatever. Like I feel like not enough people talk about Will Anderson. And it feels like there's this slow awakening to what Will Anderson is. And the same with Evan Neal. How so many people are so hesitant to like throw him into the top of the left tackle class, and instead are like, well, he could play all the other positions really good. We just haven't seen him play left tackle. It's like we look for all these different reasons to question guys whether or not they can get it done. And for once, we've got a guy who steps in as a freshman, and the whole world instantly knows his name, and that's got to instantly put you right at the top as far as marketability within this program as we inch closer and closer to name, image, and likeness being opened up. And I mean, can you blame him? Because this is a massive turnover spot for Alabama. All these big names are out the door for Alabama. Najee Harris was a massive name. Vontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Mac Jones built a huge name for himself, but Landon Dickerson, all of these guys were huge names. The defensive names have been a little bit quiet here lately. Patrick Surtain wasn't a guy that generated a lot of noise, but everybody understood he was that good. But I mean, in basketball with Herb Jones and John Petty leaving at the same time, this is massive turnover spot. Honestly, the best athlete on campus is probably a three-way race between Will Anderson, Evan Neal, and Montana Fouts. But McKinstry is probably the most well-known player on this campus because of one day of social media. And now he's able to take advantage of that as we get into NIL. And that's what's super special about this whole thing. Speaking of the basketball team, though, I ran a poll the other night on my Off the Edge Twitter account at Off the Edge 109. And, it was a little premature because apparently track and field was still going as I was typing the tweet. And so people let me know about that. I messed up. This is my bad. I didn't know. Can't blame me for not knowing that track and field wasn't going on. I don't control the fact that they get absolutely no media coverage at all.
Yeah, I don't really think that one's on you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just defending myself. I hate the fact that they don't get enough media attention to the point where that happens. That's terrible. But I asked the question that since college athletics for Alabama was completely done, and it wasn't. It is now, but it wasn't. Which sport you were most looking forward to as we head into the new season? And gotta say, was wildly surprised. I mean, football, men's basketball, softball, and other were the answer options. And of course, other was dead last. Softball was in a distant third. But football and men's basketball tied at 45.6% apiece. And it's 240 votes. Like, it's not like a massive, population there, but it's still a good quality size of Alabama fans. And enough people are that excited for men's basketball. J.D. Davison, he's got to bring a lot of hype with him, too, much in the same way. Unfortunately, James Rojas did suffer a torn ACL over the weekend. Hopefully he can get better and hopefully be back in time for the latter parts of the season next year. But still, when you're looking at this men's basketball team, despite losing some serious firepower in John Petty and Herb Jones, then you're feeling pretty good still. That's impressive, and that's a big hats off to Nate Oates, and even still the fact that with James Rojas on the sideline, he's a good player. And he certainly plays his role on the team, but it's not enough to make you too terribly concerned that this is going to derail the season in any way. This is something that they can overcome. What will matter though is to stave off the injuries. Just because you can survive Rojas being out for the first 3 quarters of the season, hopefully, he's able to come back, mid to late season. Then you got to keep the injuries down, because that was something that was not friendly to Alabama during their run there late in the season. We'll take a break. We'll come back for more Southern Fried Sports here on Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama sports.
You're listening to Southern Fried Sports with BamaOnline.com senior analyst Travis Reier on your home for Alabama sports. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
We're back for more Southern Fried Sports here on Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama sports. I'm Jacob Harrison, the normal producer of the show and host of my own show, Off the Edge, Mondays and Fridays from 7 to 9, and the Saturday Morning Showdown with Bryant Horn on Saturdays from 8 to 11 a.m. You can always join us there. You can call into the show, 205-342-9904 on the Peter Brook Chocolatier hotline, and whatever direction you want to go in, whether it's college football playoff expansion, the upcoming football season, whatever you want to go, completely open to you. And the phone lines are completely open as well, 205-342-9904. Got to say, Friday night, went out to a birthday party at Shindig, had a lot of fun, ate some good food. Number one, first of all, I am not the athletic specimen I once was. I would say that 10 minutes of laser tag killed me, but in reality, 3 minutes of laser tag killed me, and the last 7, I don't know what was going on with my mortal body. It wasn't functioning correctly. Listen, it was me and 8 other folks, 7 of which are dog bathers. They're my wife's coworkers. None of us are particularly athletic at all. And then one of the other spouses that was a man, he is hyped up on a Bang energy drink or something. He was running around like a madman and was insanely accurate, but was like 500 points ahead of the person that came in second. I came in 6th, and I was the least accurate shooter of anyone. Mason, are you surprised you played Warzone with me?
Well. I mean, I don't even think I've ever actually played laser tag. I don't know. How does it, do you have to lead your shots? How does it work?
No, I mean, just aim at the lights on the chest.
How do you miss
in the back?
You're not even shooting a real projectile. How do you miss?
Well, it still registers if you shoot and you don't hit their vest or whatever, but the thing that killed me, and nobody else in our group had to understand this because I was considerably taller than everybody. There were no obstacles or walls or anything that I could just stand behind.
Some would say, and this is just some people, some would say that laser tag is intended for children, perhaps.
But it's also intended for intoxicated young adults.
That's true.
And
it sounds like the place I got to go. I've never had the joy of playing laser tag. That was something I was robbed of as a child.
Right. No, that was my first time ever playing laser tag. But within the first 3 minutes of just crouching and moving a little bit quicker than usual was exhausting. So by the end, I'm just walking, I'm lumbering around, just praying for the time to run out. And I was not much longer for Shindig, but it was a lot of fun though. They've got bowling there and the arcade, and they've got axe throwing too, which was a tad bit too expensive for the night that we had already had. But certainly something I would be interested in doing is tossing an axe. But I say all that to say, someone who did work on their cardio and was evidenced, and I got to see it while I was at Shindig, was former Alabama linebacker Eric Anders, who was victorious at UFC 263 Saturday night in Glendale, Arizona. He had a rematch with Darren Stewart, who the last time they fought in March of 2020, Anders clipped Stewart with an illegal knee while Stewart was on the ground. Fight ends in a no contest. Down the road, they agreed to a rematch. Anders, at the middleweight class at 185, looked better. Now, it was a slower fight. It went the full distance. It was a unanimous decision that Anders won the fight, but there was a lot of concern based off of how slow and, the pace of the action wasn't really there, but the judges felt that Anders was in control of the fight throughout, and he did finish strong. He was able to get a mounted position and get in some ground and pound late to seal down the third round. But that brings his record to 14-5 and shows that he's got to stack some wins now. He was on a 2-loss skid. You can't find yourself at 2, 3, 4-loss skids in the UFC, or you'll find a hard time of advancing through. But nonetheless, he talked about how, he goes from having to be in a position where he makes a strip sack in the national championship, helps seal the victory for Alabama in 2009 against Texas in the Rose Bowl, to being a janitor and then having to figure out how to get into this fighting world. And now he's starting to find his success, starting to rack up some wins. He is improving as a fighter. He's not just taking his lumps and kind of dealing with the situation. Went in with his game plan and he executed. And I got to say, number one, UFC is just fun to watch, period. If you can, just soak in the prelims before a big fight and then follow the rest on social media, unless you're somewhere where, it's already paid for, I wouldn't recommend buying it. That's just me. Sometimes main events are only 5 seconds long. Speaking of which, there was a kid at UFC 263, got a knockout in 5 seconds, jumped up on the cage, landed back in the octagon, and appeared to tweak his knee. And possibly tore his ACL. I don't know. I haven't seen an update on it. I don't know his name, so I can't search it up. But
that's so funny. I feel terrible for him, obviously.
Right.
But oh man, do you remember a few years ago in the NFL when there was a plague of guys tearing their ACLs because they were trying to all jump up and do the Cristiano Ronaldo celebration where he kind of spins in the air and lands on his feet. But the way that he lands with his feet kind of stretched out, and it puts a lot of pressure on your knees. And Cristiano Ronaldo, he's 6'2", 6'3", but he only weighs $150. You got a 6'5", 285-pound defensive lineman going out there to do it. And they had 5 people in the NFL tear their ACLs or something in 4 or 5 weeks.
It is wild how the slightest turn will completely derail your season, but especially when it comes to these celebrations. I mean, we see guys flip into the end zone or do flips after they score or whatever. Probably the most hilarious one I've ever seen, though, was the what Gus Frerotte when he was with the Washington football team. This was very early on in his career when there was still the potential for him to be an elite starting quarterback or whatever. And he scores a rushing touchdown, not something routinely in his repertoire, and runs up to the side padding on the wall and headbutts it and gives himself a concussion and was out for the rest of the game, and I believe missed the next game, and kind of began to derail the Washington football team season that year.
That's a football guy right there.
Yes. It kind of derailed Gus Frerodte's entire career, too. He was a perfectly fine backup quarterback for most of his career, but yeah, you got to be careful with the sellies, man.
You remember Elijah Moore, after the Egg Bowl a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah.
So celebration will get you.
Oh, yeah.
Those dudes, there's nothing funnier than watching somebody get in trouble for a celebration or getting hurt on a celebration, anything where they're acting like a total jackass and they get made fun of for it.
Absolutely. Let's go out to the Peterbrook Chocolatier hotline and welcome in Pat. Pat, what's going on, man?
Man, did Alabama get a commitment that is going to make our punting unit better? From what I understand, the Troy guy is supposed to be bringing in right at 46 yards a punt average. What is this Australian rules guy bringing in? Must be better than that, or coach wouldn't have took him.
Well, yes and no. I mean, rugby guys generally are more about field position by controlling the bounces of the football rather than hang time and those sorts of things. I would have to look into him a little bit more, but I really like the Jack Martin kid. I think Jack Martin, the kid from Troy, he's already set up to be the backup this year as far as place kicking goes and as far as kickoffs go, and he should win the starting punting job. There's no doubt in my mind that he doesn't have an opportunity. If he doesn't get it this year, then after Charlie Scott does Charlie Scott does graduate, then you feel perfectly fine there. But as far as this Aussie kid, I wouldn't anticipate too much right out of the gate.
Yeah, but he's 6'6". That has a lot to do. You're not going to take him center it over his head.
Right.
But the thing about it with these Australian rules punters is most of them are running out to the side. They don't kick the ball straight on. They're running left or running right, and you're kicking the ball on the run, and the way the ball hits, it continues to roll and roll and roll and roll.
Well, that all comes down to whether or not he kicks that way or if he kicks traditionally. Now, being 6'6", if he kicks traditionally and he's athletic enough to get a lot of rise on his leg, then I would feel pretty confidently that his hang time should be pretty good. Now, I mean, the rest of it has to come together. Being 6'6" doesn't automatically make you a great punter or anything.
Exactly.
But either way, I mean, either way, he should be able to find something that works for him. But for right now, for me, Jack Martin's already proven, and I've seen what he can do. Whereas with the Aussie kid, there's not a lot out there.
I don't know if he's ever played an actual a down. But we're
no, I don't think he has.
I mean, but this guy, how in the world are they giving him 4.5 stars? I mean, is that legit? You've never seen a punter with 4.5 stars. Come on.
I mean, that's what Pro Kicker wants to give him. I don't know how you come up with 4.5 stars for a punter either, especially somebody that hasn't played.
Yeah. We'll see. It's exciting time for Alabama football. All right. Hey, have a blessed day, and we'll talk to you maybe tomorrow sometime. Thank you.
All right, Pat. Take it easy, man. Yeah, we'll go ahead and take a break. I don't know much about the Aussie punter. I don't think any of us do. I'm not going to say one way or another whether or not he's going to be, the guy. But right now, my horse is tracked on Jack Martin. I think that he's got the goods to get it all done. We'll take a break. We'll come back and begin to close her down here on Southern Fried Sports. I'm Jacob Harrison filling in for Travis Reier right here on Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide Sports.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
Partly to mostly sunny and hot this afternoon. Just a few isolated showers or storms through the evening hours. The high today 92, tonight's low 70. Tomorrow and Wednesday, a good supply of sunshine both days. The high tomorrow 93, Wednesday's high at 89. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 87 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
The flagship station for Alabama Crimson Tide football.
Alabama touchdown.
Only on Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Now, let's close it down with the final segment of Southern Fried Sports here on Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide Sports. Today, Mason was in charge of the playlist, and he put a little Rage Against the Machine today. Was there any specific reason? Is it Tom Morello's birthday? Or
Not that I know of. I just like Rage Against the Machine.
Can you blame him? I mean, Rage is awesome.
Yeah.
Tom Morello's the dude. No doubt. I mean, I love Rage Against the Machine. But something that we both also love is Arch Manning. Both of us are pretty firm as far as wanting him to be the guy that takes over after Bryce Young. No disrespect to Ty Simpson, of course, because he'll be on the roster when that happens. But Arch Manning is starting to get a lot of national recognition. Of course, we've us and other Alabama fans and other analysts, especially those deep in recruiting, have been very aware of Arch Manning for some time now. Now that he's finally in high school, though, he's part of the 2023 class. He's considered the number one quarterback in that class, of course, 6'3", 200 pounds. And, oh, yeah, his uncles are Peyton and Eli Manning. His grandfather is Archie Manning. And his father was probably the most athletic of all of the Mannings. So regardless, you feel like maybe he's got an opportunity to play the game in a more modern sense to what Peyton and Eli did. But nonetheless, I mean, we're seeing a lot of love for this guy because of the way he's able to play the game. He's deadly accurate down the field. I mean, it is absolutely some of the most impressive downfield throwing I've seen from a high school quarterback ever. Usually that's something that's very difficult for them to do because they don't get the opportunity to get that timing in. Regardless of how good any team might be, having the time to get the chemistry down between a quarterback and a wide receiver to be able to pull off deep throws is not easy. But nonetheless, Arch Manning makes it look absolutely seamless. But he's looking very closely at Alabama, looking very closely at Clemson. He's going to look at Texas and SMU next week, Georgia as well. But I'm not going to lie. I'm not one that gets too seriously invested in recruiting and where kids go. Ultimately, they're going to do what they want to do. I'm not, I'm a firm believer in don't tweet at recruits. Just leave them alone. Let them do their thing. We saw someone over the weekend be verbally abusive to Arch Manning because of the thought that he would go to Alabama instead of LSU. I'm not like that. Not even remotely close. If Arch Manning goes to Auburn, good for him. Don't, please, because if there was one kid that I've ever been come to Alabama, please, it's Arch Manning. Just the thought of a Manning playing at Alabama after going to Tennessee for Peyton and coming so close, but never getting the job done, or going to Ole Miss for Eli and you went to Ole Miss. What did you think was going to happen? But for Arch Manning to come to Alabama and potentially be one of the last quarterbacks to run this thing for Nick Saban's Alabama Crimson Tide, that gets my heart racing. That sounds fun. And the weight of the world is already on that kid's shoulders, in a way that even Trevor Lawrence didn't have to deal with. Even though Trevor Lawrence was graded a .99999 5-star by 247 Sports and was always going to be the number one pick. He's always had all these expectations, The pressure that surely Trevor Lawrence had to feel is nothing compared to what Arch Manning is having to deal with, I'm sure. But as he kind of grows into being the quarterback that he is going to be, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how that thing shakes out. But I got to say, between him and this Davey Balfour kid down the road who's not even in high school yet, hasn't even taken his first snaps, already got an offer from Alabama in the 2025 class. I mean, Saban is really – it's really incredible how he can get out ahead with these quarterbacks. And you still find the Jalen Milrose from year to year where, you still feel like you've got a guy that can come in, take the process, take the chance to to sit behind and learn and work on your craft as you prepare to be the next starting quarterback, much in the same way that Mac Jones had to. I've always said I don't think it's necessarily a matter of patience, but more or less fighting and striving and continuing to improve to become the guy that you want to be out on the field. So, but it's always interesting for me because I always kind of generally look at the quarterback position that way, whereas you can't really do it with other positions, but you're like, okay, well, this is the quarterback for the next 3 years, then it's this guy, then it's this guy, then it's this guy. And it really kind of works out that way for Alabama, where you got Bryce Young for the next 2 years, give Paul Tyson a year, then it might be Ty Simpson or Arch Manning in that spot, and then potentially David Balfour. Of course, all these guys have to commit, but it's always fun to kind of look at it that way and get that impression. But still, too, like if Arch does come to Alabama, Mason, is that worse than Peyton going to Tennessee? Because Dad and Eli went to Ole Miss. Is it worse to go to Alabama and go to the best situation when Peyton and Eli didn't do it?
I think it might be. I don't know. Just the idea of Arch Manning in an Alabama uniform just crushing the record set by his uncle, and grandfather at other rival SEC schools is just fantastic to me. Like, thinking that Alabama gets the opportunity to potentially just stomp out the beautiful seasons that Tennessee had with Peyton Manning and the great career Eli Manning had with Ole Miss. It's so funny to me.
And every year.
Yeah.
Every year get to stomp Ole Miss and Tennessee. Every single it's not like when Peyton was at Tennessee, he didn't get to play Ole Miss that often. If he even ever did, I don't know. I mean, that was back in the day. I was a baby. Ole Miss, same way with Eli. You didn't get to play Tennessee every year. Alabama, you're going to play both of them every stinking year. And you're going to play LSU every stinking year. So you're going to push it back on your Louisiana, hometown folks. You're going to push it back on uncle and dad and granddad on Ole Miss, and then push it back on your other uncle. I just love the thought of it, though, because I've always been a Peyton Manning guy. I used to stand firm on the argument that Peyton was better than Tom Brady for a long time, and, of course, that turned out to not be the case.
I was also a firm believer in that for a long time.
Just the way that he prepared.
Yeah.
And his ability, his accuracy cannot be touched. Peyton Manning, I mean, I know statistically it's not the case, and I know he had a lot of bad football games. But, I mean, just watching him play, I don't know that I've ever seen a quarterback as accurate as Peyton Manning is. And I saw a lot of Drew Brees play, and he's insanely accurate too. But the downfield accuracy, where it's a lot harder to control that ball, and Peyton had such a way of doing it. And Eli's ability to perform in the playoffs was always impressive to me. He's the brunt of a lot of jokes, but when you've got the clutch gene, you've got the clutch gene, and all you need is a chance. And I think Arch Manning is much in the way, very much the same. And I hope to see him wearing crimson and white in the future. That'll do it for another edition of Southern Fried Sports here on a beautiful Monday afternoon. I'm going to probably head out to Alabama Tradition here in a little bit. Go say hey to Charlie. We did give away our $25 gift card on Off the Edge on Friday. So, stay tuned on the first Friday of every month on Off the Edge. That, of course, is my show Mondays and Fridays from 7 to 9. I'll be there tonight as well, and we'll continue the conversation there. I hope you'll join us. Until then, the Jay Barker Show is next here on Tide 100.9, followed by The Game with Ryan Fowler, and then Tide Tonight, and then I'll be back with you at 7. Until then, have a good Monday, and roll Tide.